You win your first election by 312 votes. A school board seat. It pays nothing. You knocked every door yourself. You know your voters by name. And on your first night in the job, a man you have never met hands you his card. His company builds schools, he says. He just wants to be helpful. That card is the first inch of a ladder that ends in the United States Senate. And every rung costs more money, raised from fewer people, until the voters who put you there are background noise, and the 0.5% who fund you own the seat. Stay to the end, because the last move is not a higher office. It is the door out, a 1,400% raise to work against the people who elected you. You are not powerful the way television means it. No motorcade, no marble. Just a folding table, a nameplate, and an agenda packet. And buried in that packet, a line about the new building. Because a school board is not report cards and bus routes. You vote on the budget, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. You decide who builds the new school, who supplies the 10,000 laptops, who wins the busing contract. You thought you were here for the kids. You were also sitting on the biggest pot of money most people in your town never think about. So the man with the card finds you after the meeting. He does not ask for anything illegal. That would be crude. He just mentions his firm would love to bid on that new building next spring. A month later, someone offers to host a fundraiser for you. Not a bribe. Never a bribe. Just a room full of people who all happen to have business before your board. That is why an unpaid seat pulls in real money. In one city's school board races, the unions and the charter school groups poured in millions. And some skipped the courtship entirely. One school board president took more than $500,000 from a single contractor, whose companies pulled over $3 million in district work before the FBI showed up. The salary is zero. The leverage is not. Money does not wait until you matter. Money arrives the moment it realizes you can sign. The next rung is mayor, and the card becomes a seat at the dinner table. A private dining room. 8 people who will never appear on a ballot. A steak you did not pay for, and somewhere between the entree and the check, one soft sentence about a permit stuck in review. Nobody says the word money. They do not have to. You are not shaping a neighborhood anymore. You are sitting next to the city checkbook, and everyone at the table can hear it open. 3 months later, the permit clears. You do not even remember voting on it. It was buried on a consent agenda, approved with 40 other items in a single show of hands. The tower goes up on land the city quietly rezoned. The man from the dinner never calls again. He does not need to. The office is where land, contracts, and the future of whole neighborhoods come down to a single signature. It is not the prize. It is the counter where the prizes are handed out. And the 8 people at that dinner already knew it. That is what the steak was for. The third rung up is the state legislature, and the first thing it hands you is a pay stub that does not add up. You have a capital office now, columns outside, your name on the door, and a salary that in a lot of states would not cover the rent. The average is about $44,000 a year. In Texas, $7,200. In New Mexico, nothing at all. You are expected to govern a state for free. So before you cast a single vote, the building has already asked you a quiet question. How are you affording to be here? And if the honest answer is barely, there is a hallway full of people happy to solve that for you. You meet them on day 1. Better suits, better shoes, and they are not going anywhere. For every one of you, there are about 5 of them. In New York, it has been 24. You go home on weekends. They never leave. You are the temp. They are the staff. Then, a few weeks in, you see how a law actually gets made. A bill lands on your desk, clean, polished, better written than anything your tiny office could produce. You assume a colleague wrote it, until a staffer mentions in passing that the identical bill is moving in a dozen other states this month. Word for word. Because none of you wrote it. One group wrote it once and mailed the same draft to all of you. And in recent years, more than 10,000 bills were copied almost word for word like that, with more than 2,000 signed into law. You look down at the page with your name on it and realize the first draft was finished in a room you will never be invited into. Here is the part nobody says out loud. Paying lawmakers almost nothing does not make government humble. It makes government rentable. You hold the pen, someone else owns the ink, and you are still only halfway up. Then you reach the United States House, the federal ladder's first step, and for one beautiful morning, you believe the climb worked. A congressional pin, a salary of $174,000, a real office, a real vote, a real line in history with your name attached to it. Then someone hands you the schedule. Not the Constitution, not the bill you came here to pass, the schedule. A leaked orientation plan for incoming members Once laid out a Washington day with 4 hours of call time, dialing donors, 1 hour of donor events, and only 3 to 4 hours for actual legislative work. You stare at it like there has been a clerical error. There has not. Because you cannot fundraise from your Capitol office, you walk across the street to a party call center. A cubicle, a chair, a headset, a binder of names. Each name has a number next to it. Each number is a tiny debt you are expected to collect. You ran for Congress to write laws. Now you are saying, I hope I can count on your support, to strangers who may never live in your district, may never drive on your roads, may never need the hospital you are fighting for. The most honest description of Congress is not marble. It is fluorescent light on a phone sheet. Your party gives you a number. Dues, quotas. Raise this much for yourself, this much for the team, this much for leadership. And the machine is hungry. Winning a House seat now costs millions. One recent race ran about $46 million all in. If you stop calling, you are not principled. You are vulnerable. The money is no longer outside the job. The money is the job, with governing squeezed into the gaps. You are a representative of the people. But for 4 hours a day, you are a telemarketer with a voting card. And the most dangerous thing is how quickly that starts to feel normal. Now comes the Senate, and the strangest part is where they send you to spend your time. Not your state, a penthouse 1,000 miles from the people who elected you. You shake a hand, and an aide murmurs the name in your ear because you have never met this man, and you already know you will agree with him anyway. He is pleasant. He asks, almost as an afterthought, whether you have looked at one provision buried deep in the tax bill, a single paragraph that happens to save his industry a few $billion. You tell him you are studying it carefully. You both know what that means. On the way out, there is a check, larger than everything your entire hometown ever gave you, combined. This is the job now. The 6-year term sounds like freedom until you learn the next campaign starts the morning after you win because the number is too big to leave for later. And the number is staggering. In one recent Senate race, a sitting senator raised about $100 million and still lost. $100 million, and it was not enough. Across that one cycle, 266 Senate candidates moved roughly $1.5 billion between them. At this height, the money is not local in any sense. It comes from national networks and people with homes in 5 states and interests in all of them. The seat is supposed to belong to one state. The auction for it does not. You ran to represent a place. On the school board, you knew every voter by their porch light. Now you know your biggest donors by the provisions they want, and your voters know you from the attack ads. You are the most powerful you have ever been, and you have never had less idea who you actually work for. And then comes the last promotion, the one nobody campaigns on. You leave. Maybe you lose, maybe you retire, maybe you just want to spend more time with your family. The cameras move on. Your name comes off the door. And for the first time in years, the people whose calls you returned and whose checks you chased can stop being subtle. They can pay you directly. On the last day in the chamber, look around. About a quarter of departing House members and nearly a third of departing senators are not just retiring. They are waiting for the new badge. But the number that explains the whole ladder is the raise. Members of Congress who became lobbyists got, on average, a 1,452% raise over the congressional salary. That is not a career change. That is a payout. You spent years building the asset. The asset was access, your phone being answered, knowing where the language enters the bill, which committee can bury a threat without leaving fingerprints. You thought the office was the job. Now you learn the office was the unpaid internship for the job. Look back down the ladder and count the people who actually financed the climb. Fewer than 1 in 10 Americans have ever given any political contribution at any level. Barely more than half of 1% gave more than $200 to a federal candidate, party, or committee in one record turnout cycle. Half of 1%. That is the donor class. The room behind the room. Small enough to fit inside a luxury fundraiser, large enough to decide who gets oxygen. The voters were the audience. The donors were the employer. You just did not receive the offer letter until you left. And that is why the revolving door is not a scandal at the edge of politics. It is the destination the ladder was pointed at. Look at the ladder again from the top. Every rung up, your district got bigger. 300 neighbors, then a city, then a state of millions. But the room that actually owned you got smaller. You started answering to people who knew your name, and you ended answering to the 0.5% who could write the check. And to them, your name was only ever the one on the next invoice. You were never climbing toward the people. You were climbing away from them, one office at a time, until the only voters who mattered could fit in a single donor's living room. You did not climb to power. You climbed into debt. And the day you leave, they let you pay it off by working for them. So tell me, Which rung is the one where they stop being yours and start being theirs? The school board, the Senate, or somewhere you did not expect? Put the number in the comments.